Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Inspirational Interviews. I'm Hannah Levin with Heartfelt Wellbeing, and I'm really excited to introduce to you today Madison Waggoner. If you are watching live, you're welcome to comment in the chat. And if you're watching the replay on Facebook, you can give us a hashtag replay and let us know if you have questions or thoughts around this really awesome conversation that we're going to have. I know it's going to be awesome. So Madison and I have gotten to know each other over the last, I guess, almost year, maybe 3/4 of a year. And so let me read to you her little bio, and then I'm going to bring her on and we'll talk more about Ayurvedic perspectives on fertility and infertility. So Madison is an advanced Ayurvedic practitioner, yoga and meditation teacher, as well as a mama. Her passion is to holistically support women with education and guidance about natural ways to improve digestion, balance hormones, ease menses, boost fertility, as well as support the pregnancy and postpartum time. She loves to craft intentional plans utilizing food, movement, mindfulness, and herbal support for clients to feel empowered and radiant. And you can find her online at shriwellness.com. So without further ado, here is the lovely Madison Waggoner. Hello.
Hi.
Good to have you here. Yeah, good to see you. Can you start by telling us a little bit about how you came to study Ayurveda and be passionate about women's health?
Yeah, absolutely. I I grew up as an athlete and played soccer and ran track and played softball. I did all kinds of athletic things. And I think early on, I was just always interested in food. I have a memory of I was in kindergarten and looking at the food pyramid, like trying to pack things, like, pack all the food pyramid things, making sure I was getting the right nutrition. Um, and I just, doing the athletics is like, well, what I'm fueling my body with is really important. And that connection just grew stronger and stronger as I um, got older. And let's see here. In college, I started struggling with quite a few health issues. Even in high school, a little bit, I was struggling with some skin issues, acne. And in college, it got really bad. I was having a lot of digestive issues. Didn't know that eating salads was like the worst thing for your digestive system, is eating a lot of salads, like having a lot of constipation and gas. Um, and really struggling with amenorrhea. So I studied abroad, and at that time, I lost my cycle for many months. My skin was just so bad, um, so many acne flares. And I remember just so anxious too. Like I could not settle for the life of me. And I, at that time is it's like food. It was a lot of difficulties with relationship with my food too. It's like, being very strict and like, I would say more like calorie focused or calorie restrictive, but it's like it didn't help. Like it made the problems worse. Studying Ayurveda, knowing Ayurveda, like everything that I was doing was not helpful at all. So anyway, I returned back from studying abroad, and I saw an endocrinologist who prescribed me birth control. Basically, is the solution for getting my cycle, and that's one thing that's made me really passionate. It's like that's not a solution; it's a band aid. It's not actually getting to the root of what's going on. And then shortly thereafter, I went on Accutane. I was on the Western route, had not dipped my toes into Ayurveda at all, and did that, and it helped. But then it came back. And I moved to Denver. I did yoga teacher training where I learned about Ayurveda. I was like, oh my gosh, this is, I should back up and say that in college, I studied business management, entrepreneurship, and I minored in nutrition as well. So I was like, later in the game, I was like, I really want to study nutrition, but I had taken a very different course of studies. So yeah, when I graduated, I moved to Denver. I learned about Ayurveda and I was like, this is amazing. This is so profound. I found it, nutrition, I call it Western nutrition, like on steroids. There's so much more information about when are you eating, how are you eating, like what meals are you eating when, like don't eat a big dinner basically because it's hard to digest. So just really deep diving into the importance of the digestive system and how that was such a big healing um, revelation for me. And I stopped eating salads and started eating more soups and more cooked foods and things that worked to heal my gut. And really that's what it came down to, is the digestive system and the gut, and, really healing my menstrual cycle, healing my skin. Like, it's been just profound. And I've been studying for many years. When I learned about Ayurveda, I was like, I need to study. So I started studying pretty quickly after that. I found an online program to study through, and since I've taken some courses. So I'm in Denver, took some courses in Boulder. I went to Kerala, which is in India, southern India, for Ayurveda. It's like the birthplace of Ayurveda. I studied there for a month. And most recently, I finished my advanced training, which was 3.5 years training with Dr. Bharat Vaidya, who's here in Boulder, Superior, kind of in between Boulder and Denver. He's a 7th-generation Ayurvedic doctor, as well as an MD, OB-GYN. He's not practicing Western medicine. He has an Ayurveda school and teaches Ayurveda. So anyway, all to say, my own healing crisis and really supporting others. And I think especially with hormones, a lot of what I've learned from my teacher too, Dr. Vaidya, is like, a lot of options that MDs have is like hormones. You have any kind of hormonal imbalance, like take hormones. Like, that totally overrides what's actually happening in the body. So I'm so passionate about teaching women's health, supporting with fertility. I love, my favorite is to work with clients, a year prior to conception, to really bring into balance. And I find a lot of clients will come to me with like, that's something that's in the back of their mind that they want to do, and yet they're really focusing on bringing themselves into balance. And then honestly, conception can be so easy. I've had so many clients where it's like that, again, that's something that's in the back of their mind, and they start to talk about it more as we work together. And it's like, well, great. Like, let's, so everything we're doing is only going to support your fertility journey. And, they've had just really, really wonderful success conceiving after getting themselves into balance, which makes sense. I think.
Yeah.
So anyway, long intro.
No, that's great. Yeah. And it does make sense and it's like all of us that practice Ayurveda, it's like when all systems are working, then we work, right? Then we can do the things we can digest, we can eliminate, our reproductive health is good, our mental health is good. Like all of the pieces fit together, and we can't just pull out one. When we look at like fertility or infertility conversations, we often think, oh, it's just these specific hormones. And I think the cool part of Ayurveda is that it looks at the whole being, body, mind, and spirit. That's so important. Will you go into a little bit about, we're living in a time, I mean, our statistics are showing us that the generation that is having babies right now, which you're a part of, so Madison is pregnant right now and due very soon, that this is the most fertile generation ever, like the people that are in their 20s and 30s right now. Will you talk a little bit about that, and from Western and maybe Ayurvedic perspectives too?
Yeah. It is really fascinating. I know, I'm 32. And I think that fertility is a huge issue. It's, stats are like 1 in 5 struggle with infertility, which is pretty vast. And 1 in 4 struggle, basically with carrying. So, miscarriage, 1 in 4 pregnancies end in miscarriage, which I think is huge. That's 25%. I think, number one, I know I've supported friends through miscarriage, and it's really it's devastating. It's incredibly difficult and challenging. And I think it's also helpful to like normalize it and recognize too that, there's so many things that we can do to really support the uterus, like the blood. We can talk more about the Ayurvedic perspective of conception and how you are holistically supporting, so that, the ovum is in top quality, and that the soil, the water, like, it's like everything is in as prime shape as it can be, so that you can carry carry to term. But some other stats, generally it's a third and a third and a third. So a third of the reason of infertility is female related, a third male related, and a third both and or like unknown, which I think is really interesting too. A lot of times, especially as females, we may be like, hey, what's wrong with me? Like, why, what's going on in my body? Why can't I hold a pregnancy, or why can't I get pregnant? And I think that there's also, be compassionate with yourself too. There's other reasons for that. And I think ideally, working with fertility is really working with both partners, supporting the female partner and male partner. And yes, there's other ways to conceive IVF. If there's two females trying to conceive, like, there are other ways. I think that's really great. And I think for the female male partnership, it's like, how can we really support both partners so that the the tissues are strong in the body, the sperm and the egg are as strong as they can be. Let's see here, some other stats. As far as fertility, infertility is diagnosed if you've been trying for a year unsuccessfully, and that's if you're under 35. If you're over 35, it's 6 months where you're trying and not successfully getting pregnant, which I think's really interesting. And another really interesting statistic is how big the infertility business is. So worldwide, the market's over $28 billion, which is mind blowing. And I think a lot of Western solutions, rather than getting to the root, is like, why is there infertility? It's supporting with like this hormone or that, anovulation, basically where you're not ovulating. That can be a big reason for infertility. And there's many drugs that can support with, with ovulation. But again, rather than getting the root, it's like, why aren't you ovulating? What's going on with your hormones? What are your stress levels like? What are you eating? How's your digestive system? Like, these things are so, so important to recognize. And I think especially for carrying a pregnancy to term, is like, okay, well, modern medicine can get you pregnant, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the uterus is really ready, or that the blood, like the nourishment, the fluids are really ready to support and sustain this life. So I think that's also really important. And I don't have stats on it, but more research to do is like, what for IVF, like, what are the complications with carrying to term or after? It's like, I think a lot of these things are can be deeply studied. And we're in this like new time where it's like we have all these reproductive supports, and like, what does that look like? How does that affect baby? So interesting. Yeah.
Yes, very interesting. And you had mentioned the importance of the year prior. Like, I think a lot of people are just like, yeah, we'll get pregnant at some point, and then they're like, okay, start trying, without actually doing a lot of the preparatory work. And I know in a lot of traditional cultures, there was ceremony around like calling in a child, and that meant like cleansing processes for mama and, well, future mama and future daddy. And that was really part of like kind of like purifying the vessel to then welcome in. And we live in such a toxic world now, and people are living so arrhythmically, as we know from learning Ayurveda. Like, it's so challenging. So it's like we need such compassion for where we are, because we don't know the things that are setting our systems off, whether it's toxins in our food, or staying up really late every night, or drinking tons of Red Bull, or whatever it is, that we're just like bombarding our system with things that then make it hard ultimately for us to get pregnant. I want to or carry to term. And I do want to hear you talk about the Ayurvedic perspective on all of this specifically. Do you want to say anything about what I just said first?
No, I completely agree. I think that we do live in a time of a lot more toxins that we're exposed to, that's in our water. It's like we drink hormones. Like it's like it's in our system. Again, it can be a really systemic issue. And it's like, how can we really, um, heal the body? And I love the Ayurvedic perspective around, like, it's mind, body, spirit that we're preparing. I think a lot of females have been on birth control, like in my age range. It's like people have been on birth control for 15 years. um, and when you're on birth control, like, you're not actually menstruating, you're not actually ovulating. It's called withdrawal bleeding. So the week that you're not taking hormonal birth control, it's withdrawal bleeding. Like, the creator of birth control is a gentleman, and I think it was created in like the 50s or 60s, and to help women think that they were, um, cycling normally. They took the hormones out for a week to make you believe that you are bleeding, and you're not. And I think that that's, as I started to study women's health more, I'm like, OMG, like, we've been lied to. Where you have acne issues with your cycle, you're bleeding too much, you're not bleeding, like, hormonal both birth control pills, like, that's the solution. I'm like, oh gosh, that is not a solution. It's like, we really need to wake up as this generation to be like, we have been lied to. Like, we're not, yeah, we're not empowered in our bodies to have cycles, to know when we're ovulating, to know when we're bleeding, and what the quality of our blood is like. So women have been on these birth control pills for 15 years. They get off, like, standard Western care is like, take prenatals. Your cycle will regulate. I think there's some functional medicine around, some functional medicine information around supplementing, like birth control does. It can affect absorption of certain vitamins and minerals. So there's some information out there about, like, supplementing to support. I do think, food is medicine and digestion is everything. If you're not able to digest supplements or the food you're eating, like, it just goes back to that. Like, you're just consuming expensive supplements. And just this concept too of mind, body, spirit is like, really preparing your body. We'll talk more about Ayurvedic specifics on that. Preparing your mind. Like, are you really ready to call life in? Like, that, the spirit aspect too, is like, are you, yeah, really ready to call this soul in? And yeah, allow your body to be a vessel that changes so much. I'm 34 weeks. I'm like, oh, my body's changed a lot in the last few months, and it's beautiful. And you have to really be ready for it. It's like, it's a sacrifice. And I think for mama, as you're pregnant, is like, your body starts to change, your world starts to change. It's like, you're in this really interesting, transitional period where you're not who you were, and you're not quite birthed into mama yet. And I found with my first pregnancy, it was a really, emotional time. And it's hard to talk about. A lot of my buddies weren't, on that journey yet. And I found it was really challenging. And I found I was very emotional, and just kind of in the in between. It's like, things haven't quite shifted, and it's really beautiful. I think, yeah, the more that we can talk about these things and have support and be like, yes, like, this is normal. And yeah, there's so much that can come up too, and just really be held. I think a lot of those, sacred traditions have been lost, where it's like, you're just kind of in your own world doing these things. Or, like, if you're on a fertility journey, I think it'd be really hard for people to talk about. And it's like, how can we create more space and hold people and love them more, to really love themselves during this difficult transition time too, where it's like, you really crave to have a child, and it's just not happening, which I know can be really challenging and traumatic too for people.
Yeah, and it can, and there's a lot of self-doubt that comes up, and frustration, and grief, and and it's not something that many of us talk about or have conversations easily about. So will you share from the Ayurvedic perspective, like, how we can look at this whole realm through the lens of Ayurveda?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love this analogy of, like, gardening, planting seeds. It's like, how do you? I love, it's like, when we watch nature, it's like, this is when we learn how the body works, how nature works. I think Ayurveda is so beautiful. Like that, you want to learn how your digestive fire works. Um, Go watch a fire. Go explore, play with a fire. Like that's how your digestive fire works. Same thing with like planting seeds, right? You want to see how this beautiful tree came to be. Well, how did you plant it? So you need proper soil. Um, you need to do it at the right time of year. So if you're doing it in the dead of winter when nothing's growing, well, it's not going to work. What's the soil like? Yeah, is it fertile soil? Are there good microbes in the soil? Is it full of nutrition? Um, yeah, are there rocks in the soil? That's so important. Water. How are you providing, feeding this tree? Right? The seed, it's like, what is the seed quality like? If you have a seed that is broken or like mangled, like it's not going to have that same vitality as a good fresh seed. So I think, if we look at that, it's like we need the right timing, we need the right seed, we need the right soil, we need the right water in order to create strong life, right? It's life force at the end of the day. Is like, be it a tree, be it a human, it's like we need this um like matrix, we need this space for this growth to happen, to create the vitality for it to take hold. So in an Ayurvedic standpoint, it's like, okay, well, how does that work in the female body to conceive? So when we look at the soil, it's like, what is the uterus like? Are there fibroids? Are there, which you can still get pregnant with fibroids, but like, yeah, what is the quality of the uterus? And it's like, what is your cycle like every month? Are you having extreme cramps? Like, are things flowing freely? To support the uterus. What is the blood like? So the blood is what creates the nutrition, right? So we have the placenta, which helps to filter and basically feed baby. And then in your first few weeks, months, like that's when your body's creating the placenta for the baby. But it's so important that mama's blood is strong and has the nutrition, their nutritional support in mama's body to help feed and grow this baby. Um, what else? The timing. So, like yeah, time of year. Spring is a good time. Like that's a natural time to grow the plants outside. Doesn't mean you can't get pregnant other times, but other, timing considerations. Like, are you under a lot of stress with work? Are you under a lot of stress financially? With home life, do you feel stable and supported? Is there war happening? Like, are there like bigger things? It's like, that's not a good time to conceive, because probably you're going to be under stress. It's going to affect your hormones. It will affect your ability to conceive. So, and then last but not least is the ovum. Is the ovum strong? Yeah, like, are you ovulating regularly? Um, in Ayurveda, going back to digestion, the digestive process happens, and then all of the tissues are nourished in the body. And the final tissue to be nourished is ovum, right? So, again, going back to the importance of digestion, I think it's causation, correlation, I don't know, but there's a lot more digestive issues now as well. It's like, I can't eat this, I can't eat that. I'm like, curiosity from an Ayurvedic standpoint, when I learned this, I was like, well, what we have all these digestive issues. Like, how does that not affect the ovum? And like, that's so important. And a lot of Western medicine is treating ovulation issues with fertility. It's not the only case by any means, but that can be a big contributor. I'm like, I don't know. I see the correlation there. I'm like, how do we really support the digestive system? Get your digestive fire really strong so that your ovum um, can be nourished, just like really, really well nourished. And I think, a lot around convenience foods is like, a lot we're focusing on that. It's like, what's convenient, what's easy. It's like, what actually nourishes your body and your mind and your spirit to support the life that you hope to create. So when we look at that, this understanding, we need to have all of these pieces in alignment in order to conceive really well. And that's why Ayurveda can be so helpful to get to the root, like where's, where's the issue and how do we support? And I think starting early too is really important. It's like as we talked about, it's okay, get off birth control if you're on it and start conceiving right away. It's like, wait. Like, no, yeah, we need to do some support. We need to really focus on digestion. And as you mentioned, like cleansing, doing some kind of cleansing. I've had really amazing success too, just putting people on a simple diet and then they conceive like right after that, which is amazing. Like a really just very easily digestible, nourishing diet. And it just helps to clear the channels, what we call shrotas, Shrotamsi and Ayurveda, which are the subtle channels. And if there's any clogs, it's like, things aren't flowing freely. And what we really need is the body, the mind, the spirit to be in flow and to be in rhythm. And as you talk about, each day, Dinacharya is like doing these daily practices where you're not running around. I've heard so many stories of just like really busy, high power females having difficulty getting pregnant. And when they pare their schedules back, they slow down. It's like it works. It's like sometimes just the pressure that we feel can really affect fertility.
Yeah, I think that's great to be reminded of, like, it can really be simple in terms of that, like looking upstream, right? We don't just want to be like, oh, this immediate thing, and that's the only part of the picture. We're just looking at the reproductive system. It's like, no, it's a whole body, and we want to look upstream, and that is really important. And I just also want to mention that, like, I work with a lot of older women, right? And so, seeing what you're talking about now, like you're working more with younger women, working with, I know you work with women of all ages too, but specifically around fertility, that age time, like that carries over. It's not like if you choose not to be aware of what's going on in those early years, that it doesn't affect you later. It very much does. And that, so what I'm seeing more and more is kind of like the even further downstream from that, when we go through menopause, when we're looking at even retirement, and like what's our identity, how do we take care of ourselves, and then what's showing up. I mean, it's more and more and more diagnoses of depletion, because we haven't learned to deeply nourish ourselves, or we've had babies but then not known how to replenish ourselves, or gone through like IVF or certain intensive medical treatments and not known how to recalibrate the system after that. And so I just want to put a plug in, like, it's not just this time period of life, it's like everything after it affects. Yeah. And so, like, it all comes back to Agni and Ama, like these conversations of our digestive fire and the toxic load that we're carrying. And those are really, really powerful conversations to have. And it can sometimes be very simple, like you were saying, like eating a really warm, nourishing, easy to digest diet, letting your digestive system have breaks, like all of these pieces, like we just don't know about that in Western mentality. And so then we're looking for these big procedures and hormones, and sometimes it can be really simple. And I think that's the beauty of Ayurveda, is that it's focused on nourishment and the whole being, and that little changes can make a big difference.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And just talking about, I shared a little bit more about the industry and, being $28 billion industry. And it's like, it's so hard, because I think that people will tend to go the Western route. So they're having issues with infertility, and then they go straight to testing, and then go straight to IUI, intrauterine insemination, basically where the sperm is inserted just to make sure that's happening. And then, the body can take it up from there, or IVF, where that can be that like $20,000-$30,000, like plus $1,000. Like, it's insanely expensive. And I think, you're not the issue that my mind goes to is like, have you tried other things?
Mhm.
Like, what else can you do to bring yourself into balance? Like, there's a reason that infertility is manifesting, and how do you really support yourself, bringing simple practices like simple nourishment, simplify your lifestyle, simplify your stressors, like try those things. Those things are way more affordable, way cheaper than going straight to IVF where you're pumping your body with medications. And it is physically and mentally grueling too. And it's like, wait, yeah, how do you really support yourself so that, and if IVF is the only option, I encourage people to do that. And I'm like, what else can you try beforehand to make sure that you're doing everything you can to really bring yourself into balance? Because even if, I know a lot of females too, like um, egg retrieval and saving eggs. I think that's really wise, do that. And also, it's like, what are those things that you can be doing Ayurvedically to bring yourself into balance so that you have good quality eggs, even in your 40s, right? And, menopause happens around 50, obviously, give or take. It happens at different times. And I think, I do talk to my clients about that. I'm like, we don't, like, that is not in the forefront. And even for people who don't want to get pregnant, but it's like, you want an easeful transition into menopause. That means that you're in really good health. And how do we set you up for success now and have the tools, the skills, the knowledge so that you can have an easeful pregnancy and transition into menopause? Like, that is so critical and so key. And I think as women, like, I think a lot of education starts in our teens. And like, I'm
Yeah.
really passionate about teaching these things. Like, what is your menstrual cycle like? How do you're having pain? Like, let's figure this out now. Um, Instead of just overlaying birth control over it. It's like, let's start at the beginning and teach these things to um, females of all ages, so we feel empowered. It's like, we don't have to be afraid of our menstrual cycles. It's like, we
Yeah.
try so hard to not get pregnant and then have trouble getting pregnant. It's a funny thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
and there's some really wonderful books out there that address yeah, fertility, menstrual cycle things, the Ayurvedic perspective around um, conception and birth, which I don't know if I can share those somewhere, but I'd be happy to share some of
Sure.
those. We could put them on YouTube um, for those who are interested in really getting to the root and feeling empowered. I think Ayurveda is all about empowerment too. It's like,
Yeah.
this knowledge is 5,000 years old. It works. We continue to use it because it works. And how can we, yeah, take that and use the wisdom in our current society, in our current life, to reconnect back with the wisdom with nature.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and it's really about befriending ourselves, right? Not like beating ourselves up, but
Yeah.
being like, "Oh, body, you're behaving this way. What do you need?" Like from from a loving place, and that's really a big shift for a lot of us that have tended to beat ourselves up or blame, shame, guilt, all of those things. And so, yes, thank you so much for the work you're doing in the world. Um,
Too.
and I know you're going on maternity leave soon, but then you'll be back eventually. So shriwellness.com, you can check out Madison. Is there anything else you'd like to direct people to?
Yeah. Just truewellness.com. It's great. Yeah, as Hannah mentioned, I'll be going on maternity leave. I don't know when people will be watching, if people are watching live, but yeah, pretty soon I'll be back, probably sometime January, February of 2024. Like, it's 2023, right?
Yeah.
So 2024. Yeah, just I really enjoy working with women's health issues and fertility. And yeah, as Hannah mentioned, I'm like, the 20s, 30s, early 40s, like, that's definitely a sweet spot.
Yeah.
Sweet.
And I'll say too, as a testimonial for Madison, that I have worked with her, not that I'm trying to get pregnant, I'm not, but just with my own hormone balancing and menstrual cycle being 45, and that it's really helpful, even if you do have a lot of knowledge about Ayurveda or other things, that sometimes you're too close to yourself to really see yourself clearly. And so I have really appreciated working with Madison, and already within one cycle, I see a difference. and I'm excited now to see what happens with the next cycle, right? So it's very powerful, and I just have, a lot of faith in you and the work that you do, and have appreciated that on a personal level. And then knowing that you're helping a lot of people with their fertility journeys, I think is just so meaningful and important. And I just know that all of the people who get to work with you on that journey are just so blessed. So yeah, thanks for being here today with us.
It's so fun. Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah,
having me.
thank you. We'll talk soon. Bye.